Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into something kind of huge? We're tackling how to pay for making heavy industry in emerging markets, like actually green, not just, slightly less awful.
Yeah, it's not just swapping a few light bulbs. We're talking steel mills, cement plants, chemicals,
Yeah.
stuff that's essential, especially as these economies grow, but pumps out a ton of CO2.
Right, so how do you square that? Everyone wants these countries to prosper, but not wreck the planet in the process. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Totally. We've gone through OECD reports, what climate funds are doing, even peeked into philanthropy and big investors' portfolios. It's a mixed bag, to say the least.
Okay, so before we get into who's paying for all this, remind us what we're even talking about. Decarbonizing heavy industry sounds kind of vague. What needs to actually happen in these factories?
It's seriously big changes. Think like capturing carbon emissions and burying them underground, that's CCUS. Or ditching fossil fuels entirely, using green hydrogen made from renewables. Not cheap stuff.
Right, which brings us to the money. Governments and big institutions, they usually take the lead, right? So what's the public funding looking like for this massive industrial makeover?
Well, the OECD data was honestly a bit grim. Between 2000 and 2021, only about 1.1 billion US dollars went towards decarbonizing steel, cement, and chemicals globally.
Whoa, wait, seriously? That's shockingly little. I was expecting at least like billions with a B. So it's not like there's this giant pot of cash just waiting to be spent. Is it awareness? Are people not seeing this as a priority?
It's complicated, but yeah, part of it is just that this money's got to cover everything.
Yeah.
And industry honestly hasn't gotten the same attention as, say, solar panels and wind farms.
Makes sense. So of that tiny amount, where is it even going? Any patterns like favoring certain technologies or regions?
One thing that jumped out, a single institution, the EBRD, that's the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, they're behind a whopping 80% of that funding for these industries.
Wow, 80%. They're really stepping up. But are they backing the really innovative stuff, the CCUS, the green hydrogen? Or is it more like making the old ways slightly less bad?
Yeah, it's more the latter,
Mhm.
unfortunately. A lot went to energy efficiency upgrades, like they funded projects in Turkey and Ukraine to make steel plants use less power, which is good, don't get me wrong.
But not exactly revolutionary change.
Exactly. And the data shows that. Funding for groundbreaking stuff like CCUS and large-scale green hydrogen, basically non-existent. A few small grants here and there, but nowhere near what's needed.
So we're in the look but don't touch phase, huh? Like we see the cool eco-friendly tech, but actually buying it is a whole other story.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And that's the problem in a nutshell. Even with funding, getting from those small pilot projects to actually changing how industries operate, that's the real hurdle.
So if governments and institutions aren't coughing up the dough, where do we turn? Could climate-focused funds be the answer?
They could, but there are limitations. Organizations like the Climate Investment Fund, CIF, and the Green Climate Fund, GCF, they're doing important work.
Right, everyone's heard of those.
But very few have programs specifically for heavy industry. It's just not their main focus.
So we can't pin all our hopes on them being the big savior?
Oh, unfortunately not. And even when they do fund industrial projects, it's tough. Long approval times, not enough money available at favorable terms. It's an uphill battle for sure.
So we got to look at other options, right? Because
Right.
we're talking serious cash to really make these industries green. Which brings us to the private sector, the big investors. How do we convince them this is a smart place to put their money, especially in emerging markets where there's like extra risk?
$1 million question.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's been a tough sell. OECD data shows between 2012 and 2020, only about 1.2 billion US dollars in private investment went to decarbonizing these industries.
So even when companies want to do the right thing, getting the cash is like pulling teeth. What's holding them back?
A few things. One is, frankly, a lot of projects are just too risky. This new tech, it's not always proven at scale. Investors need to see it work before betting big.
Yeah, it makes sense. Nobody wants to be the guinea pig with millions on the line.
Exactly. Then there's policy flip-flopping. If governments aren't stable on climate action, like, will they stick with carbon taxes? Will regulations last? Investors get spooked.
Like building on shaky ground, you need that solid foundation to even consider it.
Spot on. And then proving it worked. Measuring the exact impact of, say, an investment versus overall emissions dropping. Tricky.
Right, if investors can't point to concrete results, it's way less appealing. But hey, we've got some unexpected players too, right? Philanthropies, those big investment funds, they're dipping their toes into this world. What's their angle?
Philanthropies, they're interesting. They can take more risk, fund The wild ideas traditional investors wouldn't touch, pilot programs, research, stuff that could be huge but needs that initial push.
So, like the venture capitalists of decarbonization, seeding the ideas that'll blossom later.
Exactly. And their money, while smaller overall, it's growing fast. Plus, they have influence beyond just cash. They shape the conversation, advocate for bolder policies.
It's not just about writing a check, it's about using their voice to get things moving.
Totally. Bringing together governments, industry leaders, NGOs. They're often the ones pushing for that collaborative approach.
Now, the really intriguing ones for me, the big guns, pension funds, insurance companies, these are giants. Why care about something as specific as heavy industry going green?
It seems counterintuitive, but more and more, they're realizing climate change equals the financial risk. Stranded assets, supply chain chaos, tougher regulations, it hits their bottom line eventually.
So self-preservation as much as altruism.
Partly, yeah. But also, they see where the world's going. The transition to clean energy is a huge opportunity. Those who don't adapt, they're going to be left behind.
They're reading the writing on the wall, their success is tied to a greener future.
Exactly. And we're seeing it in action. Dumping fossil fuel investments, pushing polluting companies to clean up, even directly funding green projects. Initiatives like Climate Action 100 Plus are gaining traction, where they team up to pressure the biggest polluters.
So they're flexing their financial muscle, which is huge. But are we seeing real results yet? Or is it too early to tell? That's a billion-dollar question, right? Like, we can throw money at the problem, but is it actually making a dent?
It's tough to measure. It's not like you invest $1 million and boom, emissions drop by X amount. There's a lag, for one,
Right. These things take time.
and then separating what's due to an investment versus, say, new tech just getting better on its own or government policies kicking in,
Yeah.
it gets messy.
So we're still figuring out if those investments are moving the needle enough.
Yeah, it's early days. And honestly, one of the biggest headaches is like, what even counts as transition finance? There's no universal definition.
Oh, so one person's green investment is another person's business as usual with a green label slapped on it.
Exactly. And without that clarity, it's impossible to track if money's going to real solutions or if it's just greenwashing.
So we need everyone on the same page. Otherwise, it's like we're all playing the same game, but with different rule books.
Exactly. Clear definitions, ways to measure actual impact. That's how you make sure investments go to those truly transformative projects.
So not just how MUCH money, but where it goes, ND proof it worked. That's what'll get investors on board long term, right?
Totally. And the more you can prove this stuff works, the more others jump in. It's like a snowball effect. More confidence, more money, faster progress. It becomes a no-brainer then.
So what you're saying is there's hope. We're not doomed yet.
Not at all. And look, it's not just about avoiding disaster, right?
Yeah.
This transition, it's an opportunity. Jobs, innovation, a better future overall.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, stay curious. This is a big one, folks. Whether you're the one investing, making policy, or just trying to live a bit greener, stay informed, ask the hard questions because, yeah, the planet kind of depends on it. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.